Connie Fraser. In Season 1, Episode 1, we're introduced to Connie Fraser, a government agent from Hawkins Lab, and right from her first appearance, it's clear this woman is ruthless. She carried out orders without hesitation or mercy. In fact, her first major act in the series is murdering Benny Hamanda, kind-hearted diner owner who tried to help Eleven when she was scared and alone. Connie posed as a social worker.
Connie Fraser, Social Services.
Social Services. My apologies.
Gained Benny's trust, then shot him in cold blood. And to make things worse, they framed his death as a suicide. No remorse, no second thoughts. Just a cleanup job. Throughout Season 1, Connie stayed in the shadows, hunting Eleven like she was some escaped lab rat. She showed up regularly, threatening to kill anyone who got in her way, including children. Her mission was clear: bring Eleven back, no matter who had to die in the process. But in Episode 8, things changed. As Connie and her agents closed in on Eleven and the boys inside Hawkins Middle School, she thought she had the upper hand. Guns drawn, backup ready. But she underestimated Eleven. In a split second, Eleven turned the tables. Using her telekinetic powers, she crushed Connie's brain from the inside, causing blood to pour from her eyes and nose. She dropped dead on the spot. But wait until you meet the man who created this system of abuse and thought he could keep controlling it forever. Dr. Martin Brenner. In Season 4, Episode 8, we finally see the end of Dr. Martin Brenner, also known as Papa. Brenner was the mastermind behind the Hawkins Lab experiments. He abducted children with psychic powers, including Eleven, and raised them in a prison disguised as a laboratory. He called himself Papa, but in reality, he was just a cold scientist obsessed with control. For years, he mentally and emotionally manipulated Eleven, all under the excuse of protecting her. In Season 4, Brenner returns, but instead of changing, he does the same thing again. He builds a secret lab, isolates Eleven, and once again tells her it's for her own good. He never truly lets go of the idea that she belongs to him. But this time, things go differently. When Lieutenant Colonel Sullivan raids the lab, Brenner tries to escape with Eleven, but before he can make it out, he's shot by a sniper. As he lies dying in the desert, he reaches out to Eleven, hoping for forgiveness or maybe control one last time. But Eleven doesn't give him that satisfaction. She walks away silently. This moment is important not just because Brenner dies, but because Eleven finally breaks free. She chooses herself. No more manipulation, no more guilt. And while Brenner used manipulation to cause harm, our next character did it with paranoia, brute force, and a deadly obsession with justice. Jason. In Season 4, Episode 9, we see the final moments of Jason Carver. Jason started out as Hawkins High's basketball captain, but after his girlfriend Chrissy's sudden death, he snapped. Instead of looking for truth, he let fear and anger guide him. He convinced himself that Eddie Munson and the Hellfire Club were part of some satanic cult. And just like that, Jason became the human face of paranoia, dangerous force, more unhinged than the monsters from the Upside Down. But Jason didn't stop at spreading fear. He led a full-on manhunt. He pushed the town into a frenzy. And in the final episode, he stormed the Creel house and attacked Lucas while Max was inside trying to distract Vecna. That one moment nearly destroyed everything the group had planned. Jason didn't just throw a punch, nearly ruined the entire mission to save Hawkins. And then, the ground beneath him split open. As Vecna opened the massive gate to the Upside Down, a supernatural quake tore through the Creel house and ripped Jason in half. But Jason wasn't the only human who treated Hawkins like a battlefield. One Russian brute made an entire town suffer before he met a death that was just as savage as he was. Grigori. In Season 3, Episode 8, we see the brutal end of Grigori, the stone-faced Russian hitman who spent the entire season making life hell for Hopper, Joyce, and basically anyone who got in the way of the secret Soviet mission under Starcourt Mall. From the moment he appears on screen, it's obvious this man is trouble. And unlike some Stranger Things villains, Grigori had no mystery, no supernatural backstory. He was just cruel and efficient. But the moment that truly made fans hate him, the cold-blooded execution of Alexei, lovable, Slurpee-loving Russian scientist who had started warming up to the American side. Just as Alexei was beginning to enjoy a glimpse of freedom and happiness, Grigori shot him dead at the fair. As the season builds to its climax, Grigori corners Hopper and Joyce in the secret Soviet lab underneath Starcourt Mall. A brutal fistfight breaks out between Hopper and Grigori in the heart of the chamber housing the gate machine called the Key. And just when it seems like Grigori has the upper hand, Hopper outsmarts him. In one swift move, Hopper grabs Grigori and throws him into the spinning gears of the machine. The same machine Alexei had helped design. The same machine Grigori was protecting. Within seconds, Grigori is torn apart, completely shredded by the machine's massive coils. Hopper doesn't hold back either. As he tosses him in, he delivers the perfect one-liner.
I'll see you in hell!
See you in hell. But while Grigori was all brute force and cold blood, our next character had something even more terrifying. Billy Hargrove. In Season 3, Episode 8, we witness one of the most emotionally layered deaths in Stranger Things, the fall and redemption of Billy Hargrove. From the moment Billy is introduced in Season 2, it's clear this guy is trouble. He's aggressive, cruel, and dangerously unpredictable. Whether it's verbally abusing his stepsister Max, getting violent with Steve, or throwing around racist jabs at Lucas, Billy had a long list of red flags. And in Season 3, things get even darker. He becomes becomes the Mind Flayer's primary puppet, abducting Hawkins residents one by one, dragging them into a gruesome fate as part of the Flayed. He wasn't just a pawn, he was the face of the enemy for most of the season, and unlike monsters from the Upside Down, Billy had a choice before he was possessed. That's what made him so terrifying, because some part of that cruelty felt real, even before the Mind Flayer stepped in. But then, something unexpected happened. In the final showdown at Starcourt Mall, Eleven reaches into Billy's mind. She doesn't fight him with powers, she fights him with memory. She reminds him of his mother, the beach, a moment of peace. And something inside Billy breaks free. For the first time in a long time, he's not a monster. In that brief, powerful moment, Billy sacrifices himself. He steps in front of Eleven and takes the Mind Flayer's blade straight through his chest. But if you thought that was brutal, wait until you meet the guy who was evil even before he got possessed by a monster, Tom Holloway. In Season 3, Episode 5, Tom Holloway, the smug, sexist boss from the Hawkins Post meets one of the most gruesome and narratively satisfying deaths in Stranger Things. Before the monsters ever reached the newsroom, Tom was already a villain in his own right. As editor-in-chief, he ran the Hawkins Post like a boys' club, where Nancy Wheeler was treated more like a coffee fetcher than an actual journalist. He belittled her ideas, mocked her curiosity, and eventually fired her not for making mistakes, but for daring to chase a real story about strange events happening in town. He wasn't just a bad boss, he was a symbol of everything wrong with workplace sexism. But karma works quickly in Hawkins. Soon after, Tom becomes one of the flayed townspeople possessed by the Mind Flayer to do its bidding, and with that, his creepy behavior turns deadly. Alongside Bruce Lowe, another chauvinistic co-worker, Tom tracks Nancy and Jonathan to the hospital. The two possessed men ambush them in what turns into a terrifying, bloody showdown. During the fight, Tom pins Jonathan down, clearly intending to kill him, but Jonathan fights back, grabbing a scalpel and stabbing Tom right in the throat. It's brutal. Tom gurgles, collapses, and then, like all the Flayed, melts into a puddle of goo, merging into the Mind Flayer's fleshy spider monster. Now here's the interesting part. Even though he was possessed, nobody felt bad for Tom, but Tom wasn't working alone. His sleazy sidekick was right there with him, cruel, loud, and ready to meet the same messy end. Bruce Lowe. In Season 3, Episode 5, Bruce Lowe, Nancy's smug, sexist co-worker at the Hawkins Post meets a gory, well-deserved end that fans couldn't help but cheer for. Bruce wasn't just your average background character. He was loud, obnoxious, and relentlessly cruel toward Nancy. From the start, he made fun of her ideas, mocked her ambition, and used every chance he got to belittle her during her internship. He wasn't just part of the toxic boys' club at the Pasta, was Tom Holloway's right-hand man. And when it came to making Nancy feel small, Bruce took the lead.
You think you can follow the clues, solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
But like many awful people in Hawkins, Bruce's downfall came with a supernatural twist. He was one of the townspeople possessed by the Mind Flayera process called being flayed. Once taken over, Bruce became something even more dangerous, a murderous vessel for the monster's agenda. But honestly, it wasn't a huge personality change. He was creepy and violent before. Now he just had glowing veins and inhuman strength to go with it. In the hospital, Bruce goes full slasher villain. He chases Nancy down dimly lit hallways, injured but laughing, enjoying the hunt. And for a moment, it looks like Nancy is done for. But Nancy Wheeler doesn't back down. In a moment of pure grit and fury, she grabs a fire extinguisher and smashes Bruce's face in repeatedly until he collapses, dead. His corpse then melts into black goo, just like Tom's, joining the Mind Flayer's hideous biomass. And honestly, it was glorious. But now let's rewind way back to the original monster that started it all, a creature that haunted our nightmares from the very first episode. And if you're loving this countdown so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because the deaths coming up are even more intense, emotional, and downright brutal. The Demogorgon. In Season 1, Episode 8, Demogorgon finally meets its end. And not only was it deserved, it was absolutely necessary. The Demogorgon wasn't just a monster, it was the original face of evil in Stranger Things. This flower-faced predator from the Upside Down abducted and devoured innocent people without hesitation. Barb, Will, and countless unnamed victims were dragged into another dimension by this mindless killing machine. It didn't speak, it didn't reason. It existed to hunt, kill, and destroy. And for 8 episodes, it did exactly that. It terrorized the kids. It stalked Joyce and Hopper. It hunted anyone who dared to come close to the truth. By the end of the season, the Demogorgon had become a symbol of everything unknown and horrifying about the Upside Down. But in the finale, the tables finally turn. In a final standoff inside Hawkins Middle School, the Demogorgon corners the group. It's moments away from tearing everyone apart until Eleven steps forward. She's tired, she's scared, but she's not backing down. And then it happens. Using the last of her telekinetic strength, Eleven blasts the Demogorgon into ash. It disintegrates in front of our Islim's face, everything gone. In the process, Eleven vanishes too, making it seem like she sacrificed herself to destroy the creature. And speaking of darkness, what if the monster wasn't flesh and teeth, but smoke, shadows, and mind control? The Mind Flayer. In Season 2, Episode 9, Mind Flayer faces a crushing defeat that feels like a long-awaited win for Hawkins. It's not a complete death, but it's the kind of takedown that makes you want to stand up and cheer. The Mind Flayer isn't your typical villain. It's not not a creature you can punch or outsmart. It's a towering, smoke-like entity from the Upside Down, with the power to possess minds, control creatures, and spread its evil through underground tunnels like a virus. In Season 2, it sets its sights on Hawkinsand, specifically on Will Byers. What starts as a strange connection becomes full-blown possession. Will loses control of his body, his memories, voice, and even emotions are hijacked. While the town tries to understand what's happening, the Mind Flayer quietly builds an army of Demodog's monstrous creatures that act as its soldiers. But in the finale, Eleven decides enough is enough. With the help of Hopper, she heads into the lab to confront the rift between worlds. And while chaos unfolds above Demodog's attacking, people screaming Eleven stands firm in front of the gate. She doesn't fight the monster with weapons. She fights with rage, with pain, with power. Screaming at the top of her lungs, Eleven forces the Mind Flayer out. She slams the gate shut with such force that it severs the Mind Flayer's link to our world. All the Demodogs instantly dead. The tunnels beneath Hawkins withered and useless. Will finally free, and the Mind Flayer banished. Not killed, but cast out its grip on Hawkins broken. But the Mind Flayer wasn't done yet. It had one more move to make something bigger, bloodier, and built from human flesh. The Mind Flayer's Spider Monster. In Season 3, Episode 8, the Mind Flayer's Spider Monsterone of the most grotesque, horrifying creations in Stranger Things is finally destroyed, and its death, brutal, poetic, and 100% deserved. This wasn't just another upside-down creature. By this point in the series, the Mind Flayer had evolved. Instead of hiding in shadows, it decided to make a monster in the real world, a massive, flesh-covered beast built by melting and absorbing dozens of possessed humans. Seriously, people like Heather, Doris Driscoll, even children's parents were turned into sludge to create this thing. It was horrifying. The spider monster didn't just kill people, it used their bodies to build itself. Every step it took dripped with gore. Every roar reminded viewers how high the stakes had become. And in the final episode, it went after the one person the Mind Flayer couldn't control, Eleven. With Eleven injured and her powers weakened, the group had to rely on brains and bravery rather than brute strength. While the monster rampaged through Starcourt Mall, Joyce and Hopper raced into the underground Russian facility. Their goal? Shut down the gate machine, the same machine keeping the Mind Flayer connected to our world. And they did. Joyce turned both keys and shut the gate, severing the Mind Flayer's link in real time. Instantly, the spider monster began to scream and collapse. Cut off from the Upside Down, it died on the mall floor, twitching, roaring, and finally going still. But far from Hawkins, another evil man was using the Upside Down for sport, and karma was waiting with teeth. Warden Oleg Melnikov. In Season 4, Episode 7, Warden Oleg Melnikov, the cruel overseer of the Soviet prison in Kamchatka, finally gets what's coming to him. And the irony? It's the most poetic justice Stranger Things has ever delivered. Melnikov wasn't just running a prison. He was running a horror show. Deep inside the snowy Russian fortress, Jim Hopper and countless inmates were starved, beaten, and stripped of all hope. But the worst part? Melnikov used the Demogorgon as a gladiator pit, attraction forcing prisoners to fight the monster for his own twisted amusement. And he wasn't subtle about it either. He lured Hopper and other prisoners with the promise of a feast, a second chance, something resembling humanity. But it was all a setup. While they were eating, guards locked the doors. The tables turned literally, and suddenly, they were locked inside an arena with the Demogorgon. A death sentence disguised as dinner. Melnikov watched it all from a safe distance, smiling. But karma has a way of catching up. Thanks to Joyce and Murray's infiltration, everything spirals out of control. The Demogorgon is freed. The alarms blare. Guards panic. And amidst the chaos, the monster turns on its master. In one chilling moment, Melnikov is mauled by the same creature he once controlled. We later see his mangled body bloody, terrified, and completely helpless. But Melnikov wasn't the only one who thought he could tame the Demogorgon. Someone else tried, in this time. The fight wasn't just physical, it was legendary. The Russian Demogorgon. In Season 4, Episode 9, the Russian Demogorgon, Hopper's deadliest tormentor in the Kamchatka prison, finally meets its end. This isn't just any Demogorgon. This is the Demogorgon the Soviets captured, caged, and used to execute prisoners in gladiator-style death matches. We've seen it tear through inmates, rip guards apart, and stand as an unstoppable threat throughout the Russian subplot. Cold, savage, and emotionless, it was less of a creature and more of a biological weapon held on a leash, but always one crack away from chaos. And let's not forget, Hopper was one of its almost victims. He was thrown into the pit, unarmed, terrified, and completely at the mercy of this beast. And while he managed to survive, the scars, both physical and mental, were deep. But in the finale, everything changes. As Vecna begins tearing Hawkins apart, Hopper, Joyce, and Murray realize they need to destroy this final Demogorgon not just to protect themselves, but to weaken Vecna's hive mind across the world. What follows is nothing short of legendary. Murray scorches the Demogorgon with a flamethrower, slowing it down. It's roaring, enraged, still deadly. But then, Hopper picks up a medieval sword and charges, and in a moment, straight out of a Dungeons Dragons campaign, he decapitates the Demogorgon in one clean swing. Now click on the screen to watch the most painful deaths in Stranger Things.